Everyone is a star child, made of stardust and the infinite potential of the universe. This extraordinary fearless something in each of us clamors for freedom from the bonds of fear, conformity, and an ordinary life. Welcome to Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot, where practical tools and solutions from the intersection of mind-body medicine, science, and spiritual well-being awaken and empower you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in the sweet spot. While there are many marriages here in the U.S., there are also a lot of divorces. As a matter of fact, there were almost 700,000 divorces in the year 2021, according to the CDC. And divorce is hard on everyone. It's hard on the parents, it's hard on the kids, and it can just be hard on the rest of the family because there's so many hopes and dreams invested in that and the possibilities. So the question becomes, how do we get through divorce so that people are in as whole as possible? How do we get through divorce and do it in such a way so that divorce doesn't have to suck? So joining me for that conversation today is my guest, Cherice N. Carter, aka the divorce coach.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, you know what? I'm so glad that you're here, and we were recently introduced to each other by another friend of mine and guest, Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields, and I was like, this is a great conversation to have. And I had mentioned to you actually during my first season, I actually did an episode where I titled it "The Men-Women Differences That Make Us So Bad in Marriages."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because thank you. Because I was surprised that it's depending upon the study, 70 to 80% of women are initiating the divorces.
Yes. That is so true.
Yeah, and it's like 50%, over 50% of first marriages that end in divorce. Second marriages is like somewhere 63%, something like that, maybe 67% of second marriages are ending divorce. And then third marriages is like 73%. So if you get married the third time, 73% of those third marriages are likely to end up in divorce. Right. So given the high numbers of divorces, in the U.S., and again, that's according to the CDC, as of 2021, we need to have some conversations about how we do this, in a way that it's just, as I like to say, where we don't have just wreckage strewn all across the road in terms of the parents and the kids.
Right. But I think that we should be having these conversations because, first of all, I found that, most of my clients, there was a lack of communication. So when there's a lack of communication, you can't really understand what your needs are and what the other person's needs are. And then we can also talk about the lack of dedication, because sometimes people aren't dedicated enough to stay in a marriage. They may have one or two issues and feel like, oh, this isn't for me and I'm ready to break. So, we should understand that marriage is a long-term commitment. It's something that you have to work for. It's something that we need to be dedicated to. And it's something that we need to hold true to our hearts. We just can't just throw in the towel because of something so simple that happened and we can't talk about. So that's why we should have better communications with our partners, so we can have a good communication line to get through those obstacles that may occur in the marriage.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those folks who may not, you know, have had the benefits of your sage wisdom and experience,
Mhm.
um, Cherice N. Carter, aka the divorce coach,
Yes,
is the founder and CEO of Coaching the Masses Inc. And you are a certified divorce coach,
yes,
a life coach, and
yes,
author of her new book
yes,
called Love Notes, Affirmations, Essays, Inspirational Notes, Poems, and Quotes Inspired for Healing, which is actually set to be released March 10th of
yes,
this year. So in just a few weeks, right?
yes. I'm very
So
excited. About
yeah, yeah, and congratulations on that. So then, as a divorce coach, Cherise helps her clients find clarity, healing, and a renewed sense of self as they navigate the challenging process of divorce, then embrace their new chapter with confidence and resilience.
that is correct.
So,
We help our clients find their new beginning because sometimes there are so many barriers that's in front of them. Just like the saying, I can't see the forest for the trees. Well, let's think about this. The trees are your obstacles, and what you need to do is get an axe, cut down all those trees so you can finally get through the forest. And so that's what Coaching the Masses does. We help our clients realize what those obstacles are and what those barriers are so they can move forward after their divorce, or if they have any other situations that's holding them back, we help them find out what the resolution is so they can work towards their goal.
so you at the so you mentioned at the beginning about the importance of communication
Correct.
and commitment
Yes.
as significant factors of why people end up divorced.
Hmm.
And um, so one of the things that before we really talk about that, because I think those are really fundamental and foundational to any relationship,
Yes.
um, um, and especially a marriage, but to any relationship. You know, I know part of your wisdom and knowledge and experience was it was actually through some hard earned experience.
Yes. That is correct. I was divorced in 2008. And when I was finding myself in a situation where I needed to get a divorce, it was very hard because I had two small children at the time. When I filed, it was 2006. So my daughter was 5 and my son was 3. My ex husband, he was the breadwinner. He was the breadwinner, and my main focus was really being first a good wife, and then second, being a good mother, and then thirdly, my career. So I really didn't focus on my career. So once I found myself getting a divorce, I needed to hit the ground running to really get my financial ground together because I was dependent on my ex husband for those things because he was a breadwinner. So I really needed to focus on, how can I take care of my children? What do I need to do? Having many conversations with family and friends, I said, okay, I really need to do this because I'm not the type of person who's dependent on people. I like to have my own. And I wanted my children to live the life that they lived when we were married. So it was a lot of things that I needed to do. And I knew that taking hold of my career was one of those things in order for my children to live the life that they were accustomed to.
So what kind of work were you doing during the marriage?
I worked at a financial institution where I worked in the um, anti-money laundering group. So I was a compliance officer at a bank.
Okay.
And during the divorce, I was laid off. So I didn't work for, I think I want to say maybe 9 months to a year.
Mhm.
So I found a job working at Macy's part time just to kind of keep myself busy until I can find another job. So it was really hard. I moved from a 5-bedroom home with my ex-husband to living in a 1-bedroom basement apartment in my mom's house. So that was a big
Wow.
adjustment for me and my kids.
Wow.
And as you know, as little kids, they're wondering like, why can't I go home? Why can't I go to my playroom and play? Where is daddy? So it was very hard for me to explain to them that this is our new norm for right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had in the back of my mind, I want them to have the things that they were accustomed to. So my kids was really my driving force to move forward, as you know, with a lot of women, because kids most of the times they are in um, in custody with their mothers.
Mm-hmm.
So just have to really grab all the straws and do what you have to do in order to have a meaningful, successful life after a divorce. You really need to take ownership of what you need to do in order to succeed, especially when you have children.
Yeah, and of course, the other thing that you've already pointed out is the fact that oftentimes it's when a family divorces,
Mm-hmm.
the because the dad tends to be the biggest breadwinner,
Right.
then the mom and the kids can end up falling into poverty
Yes.
because of the divorce.
Correct.
Um, which
But
of
thank
course,
God I had my mom and my dad. They really, stepped up to the plate and helped me out because there were some financial difficulties at
mhm,
first. Because my ex-husband at the time, he didn't want to help. And that's because he was going through his own hurt. His emotions was really, tied to, you know, now what can I do? And it was because of hurt. It was because of hurt that I left. So a lot of men and women, when they go through a divorce, they really act out of hurt. And a lot of times when you're acting out of hurt, you end up hurting people. You do
mm,
things that you possibly wouldn't do before. So there was a lot of hurt there,
mhm.
and with that, I wasn't provided the things that I needed for our kids at that time. So it was difficult, but I had my parents to really step up and step in and help out.
So yeah, so one of the things that, for me is two things I try to get folks to recognize is one, when you're talking about relationship or marriage, really the person you're picking is a mirror image of you, right? And some people go, huh? And so I'm going, yeah. I said because they're a reflection of your values and standards.
Hmm.
They're also a reflection of some things that are going on with you, usually self-consciously or subconsciously, excuse me,
Hmm.
subconsciously, that people don't necessarily recognize, that again, as you already pointed out, their own childhood wounds that they're trying to get worked out in the marriage, but are unaware that that's what they're doing. And so that's another reason why it doesn't work well to do that, because if you're unaware of the issue is really me and my wounds, then you make it about your spouse,
Hmm.
and it's really not about your spouse, except you picked them, or as I like to say, you the movie director, your own movie
Right.
director, and
Right.
when they show up, they audition for the role, and you have the option to say you got the role, or thank you for coming, we'll be in touch.
Right. Yeah. But you know what?
So
But with me and a
mhm,
lot of people, when you get
mhm,
married at a young age, like I was married at 27 years old.
okay.
I'm sorry, I take that back. I was married at 26 years old. We had our first child at 20 when I was 27 years old. So at 26, I was really young. I just was in love. Like, okay, I love you. Yes, let's get married. Let's do this. Let's have kids. But you're not really thinking through the process. So I have a 22-year-old daughter now.
So, so, so hold on before you go into that. I'm just going to ask you. So when you say they're not thinking through the process, what do you mean by that?
You're not looking at the whole picture. You're not looking at how that person was raised. You're not looking at what your true values are,
Mhm.
what you need going forward, like 20, 30 years. You're only looking at the now, and you really need to look further into the future. Um, can I see myself with this person in 30 years and he or she acts like this 30 or 40 years later? Would I be able to, withstand that? So it's a lot of things that you need to consider before you get a before you get married. You really need to think about those things. You need to think about, what are your financial ideas when it comes to saving. What do you believe in? Do you believe in God? So spirituality, a lot of that should come in play. And I never thought about that when I got married. I just knew I was in love. I love this man. I want to have his kids, and I thought we were going to live forever together. So I didn't think things through like I should have, because I didn't know. I was didn't date as many guys. So I just really didn't know. I was clueless.
So here's the thing. I don't think it's a matter of how many guys you date. What I've discovered is the average person doesn't know how to vet a partner. They don't know how to do the very things that you just talked about doing. And
Right.
you don't, if I don't know myself, I don't know what's a good fit for me. I don't know what works. I don't know what things to then assess or evaluate. Then, like I said, then you're learning through experience.
Right.
So, one, there was, um, like I said, 30 years or so ago, there was someone I was involved with, and I was asking God for a sign, and I didn't hear anything. Then, a couple weeks goes by, and I'm like, okay, God, you know me, I needed big bold neon letters.
Right. Right.
And I'm sitting there, wait. Cherice, I'm sitting there, and God goes, what are you doing? I was like,
Right.
huh? He's like, what are you doing? You don't want the same things. You ain't going the same place. What are
Right.
you doing? Um, and so shortly after that, I left. But the problem was I didn't recognize that was a standard I should apply to each relationship going forward. And
Right.
then you advance to like 2014, and I was working at a location. I was only at twice a month. I go into the break room to go to the bathroom, and there's this Victorian magazine is like calling to me. I'm like, what is this all about? So I
Mhm.
take the magazine, I'm looking at it, and I come across, flipping through it, I come across this quote by his name is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and it says, life has taught us that love does not consist of looking at each other.
Mhm.
Excuse me. Life has taught us that love does not consist of gazing at each other, but of looking together in the same direction. I was like,
Mm.
oh,
I like
right,
that.
right. Yes, yes. And then I was thinking about that, and that big aha, and then I put it together with what God had said to me, and I was seeing it's the same thing just being said differently.
Right.
So the issue is that, as you've already stated, the issue is, do we want the same thing, and are we going the same place, to keep it simple? Because if we don't, then we can't get there together.
Right.
And but that means I got to be doing a lot of self-reflection, and have self-awareness and understanding. So
Mhm.
actually, one of the books I recommend for people, it has like over 250 questions. It's
Mhm.
actually written by Dr. Robin Smith. It's called Lies at the Altar. And seriously,
Mm.
there's like over 250 questions in there on different areas of relationship and marriage.
Mhm.
So whether it's child rearing, money, just whatever, just all those different areas that you can do for yourself. And ideally, obviously, if you have a partner, or if you're engaged, or if you're already married, you can still do it. But the idea is to go through those questions, and so that you can see, how like-minded you are, and again, then be able to really partner with each other.
Mhm.
So there's that aspect that you already mentioned, but then the other part of it too is, um, when it gets to that place where, and I want to make sure that we talk about, because I think, again, what you said is really key and fundamental about commitment, communication, and commitment. And what were your examples of that, in terms of what were your examples growing up of marriage and communication, and commitment, and people lacking the language
Right.
to express what they're thinking and feeling. And if you can't do it for yourself, then you can't do it with a partner. So
Right.
then, the marriage breaks, if the then the, once the marriage breaks down, what I discovered, because because I divorced back in 2009 after 10 years. What I discovered was actually the grief was around the fantasy of the marriage,
Right.
because if the marriage had been all of that, there wouldn't be a divorce.
Hmm.
So it wasn't really the grieving of the marriage as much as it was the grieving of the fantasy of the marriage.
That's good. But a lot of times when you go through it, not a lot of times, all the time, you do grieve the marriage, you grieve not being in that person's life anymore. Like for me, I started grieving a couple of years after I was divorced because I was dealing with other things in my life. I had like two grandparents that died within months of each other, and then I had a family member who was going through something where they tried to kill themselves twice. So I was dealing with that and dealing with helping my kids get through um, my divorce with their dad.
Right.
So it took me some years to kind of grieve it. And then when I sat down and I really thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm divorced. I started to really think about how I no longer was talking to my ex-husband, because this
Mhm.
person, I wake up with this person every day. I talk to this person every day. Whether we were getting along or not, I still saw this person, right? This
Because how
person,
long were you all married?
we were married 8 years.
Okay.
We were married for 8 years. So it was very hard. And when things happen in your life, when good things occur, when you're married, who do you go to? You first go to your spouse and say, hey, this is what happened to me. I got a raise today, or whatever the good thing is. And so I no longer have that. So I
Well,
started
so and so was twanging my last nerve. Hopefully it ain't you today.
right. So if you do, you grieve it, and it took me some time, but
Yeah.
I finally realized I had to accept this was my new norm.
Yeah.
Cherice is no longer no one's wife. I am single with 2 kids. I'm a single mom with 2 kids. So it was
So that brings up so you brought up another issue. That whole issue of identity, and
mhm,
then also the losses that occur when the marriage breaks down in terms of other friendships and other relationships.
yes,
If you had a good relationship with your in-laws,
yes,
how that's altered and changed. And then obviously there is the losses that occur for the kids
mhm.
as well, right?
Hmm. So even with my ex-husband's family, we still talk. So as my kids were getting older, when I would have birthday parties for them or graduations for them, I always included my ex's family, because those are my kids' family, and I want them to still be connected with them because that's their family. So I've always included them when my kids were celebrating something, and I think that's what you should do. Um, if you have children, you should include your ex spouse's family for celebrations, because that's part of your kids, families. And I know some people who don't include their ex spouse's family members when it comes time for their kids to have celebrations. They're like, my ex husband, he can throw them a party. Well, I wasn't like that, because I wanted my kids to feel normal. I didn't want them to say, well, okay, daddy giving us a party this weekend and mommy giving me a party. I didn't want that. I want them to still feel like, okay, this is normal. This is
Mhm.
normal for me to still be with my dad's family and my mom's family at my
Yeah.
celebrations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fortunately for me, I had um, the example of what I call my mother, the goddess mother.
Hmm.
Um, so she also has a nickname, Peaches. Because Peaches didn't play.
No, that's
But
right.
but she but she is very much a person who is very inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And because of her example of that, it's very much about maintaining connections,
Right.
right? And so when it came to um, when it came to in the process of me divorcing, I said to my ex, I said it's then husband, I said to him, because things were getting, like he said, it was a little contentious.
Right.
It was never bad, but but what I said to him to kind of get us on the same page was, I said, you know what, I said, when we divorce or not, even when we're divorced, we're still going to be family, and we're still going to have to learn how to raise this baby together.
Right.
So, we need to we need to work this out.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that had everything to do with my mother's example. And because of that, um, uh, my my daughter is from a previous relationship, and then my son from my one and only marriage, that I have had both of their dads
Mm-hmm.
sitting at my holiday table,
Mm-hmm.
and they get along well. And as a matter of fact, there's like almost an 18-year difference between my two kids. And so my son calls my daughter's father, she calls him uncle. So that has very much to do with my, as I said, with the goddess mother's example of maintaining connections and
Right.
family, um, despite the fact that the marriage is no longer
Right.
in existence.
And that's important because kids need to feel, they need to feel comfortable. They need to feel loved. They also need to feel respected, right?
Mhm.
Because if we exclude that part of them, because basically when you think about it, that your spouse's family, that's a part of your kids, so you're not willing to have them celebrate with you. It's like you're excluding that part of your kid. So I've always wanted my ex-husband's family to be around. They've been for proms, graduations, birthday celebrations, college trunk parties. So I've always included them because for me that was, the best thing for my children. They needed to be, surrounded with their families when things, when things happened to them that was good. And I always wanted to be, be inclusive.
Well, the other thing too, though, for me, though, as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, the other thing I tell people though is, when you make the kids choose like that, it's
Mhm.
probably problematic for the kids. You're
Correct.
putting the kids in the middle, and in some ways, you're forcing them to choose.
Hmm.
It's very uncomfortable and it's very unhealthy. And it's true in general that to be a good parent, you need to grow yourself up.
Oh yes.
You need to heal your own wounds,
Yes.
and you need to not inflict those wounds on your kids.
Yes.
And so you need to be able to be mature and be able to put your kids' needs
Right.
ahead of yours in that case. And so that means not putting them in the middle. That means not saying negative things
Yes.
about the other parent, and again, and their family. Anything you need to address needs to be handled,
That
with the parent directly.
yes.
Don't send messages through your
Yes.
kids
No.
to the other parent, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. So here's what I want to do. One, I want us to go to break, but when we come back from break, let's go ahead and talk about um, the issue of communication and commitment, because I think that that's important fundamentally in the marriage, but it's still foundational even after the divorce. And then just what's your process to help the adults and the kids um, to to get through the divorce so that divorce doesn't have to suck.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Heaven Abounds in You takes you on an inward journey of discovery that dramatically transforms your outward experience of life. Discover the power of belief. Utilize it in connection with science to create a vision of meaning and purpose that pulls you forward. Let go of the meager me to discover the magnificent me. Let go of your painful past and live life free from fear, worry, and stagnation. Experience an abundant universe as you powerfully create happiness, relationships, health, and limitless opportunities. When you heal your mind, all things are possible. Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Balin A. Durr, and here on Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot, we are talking with my guest, Cherice N. about divorce doesn't have to suck. So before the break, we were talking about, um, again, being mature adults, not putting the kids in the middle, the importance of communication and commitment during the marriage, and one of the reasons why it breaks down, but also that needs to how important that is in the process of divorce. But anyway, so so we were going to talk about that, but also what is your process for helping the family get through divorce so divorce doesn't have to suck.
Mm-hmm. So what I do is I always have a consultation before we start the actual sessions. And during that consultation, I really talk to the client and say, hey, what are your goals? What do you see yourself doing after the divorce? Do you see yourself in another career? Where are we going with this? So I sit down and have a conversation with them so I can understand what their goals are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people just really want to be able to accept their new norm. Like, I'm no longer married to someone. I need to learn how to accept my new norm. So I walk them through steps of doing that. But first, I always tell them you have to accept accountability, because the divorce isn't mainly just because of your ex, right? You
Not the
have to
A word. Not the A word.
accountability. And it could be, it could be as little as how you reacted when your ex was flaring up at you, because you could have reacted in a different way, but you didn't. You acted negatively when they said something or did something to you. So
Mm-hmm.
you just really need to accept accountability, and that's how you will be able to move forward. Accepting your new norm, and a
So
lot of
what? And I'm sorry, I just want to interject this one little point, which is
okay.
simply this. To me, the reason accountability is so important because um, if 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 I can accept that I chose the person,
Mhm.
then I can then take ownership of the fact, not that I behaved the way they behaved, but in choosing to be in relationship with them, I exposed myself to their behavior.
Right.
That in choosing to mate with them and have children with them, then I was responsible in part for then having my children be exposed to that and having that experience, whether the parent is a good parent or not a good parent, whether
Right.
that parent has substance abuse issues or not, just whatever that parent is bringing to the table.
Right.
I picked them and chose to be in relationship with them, and if I can do that, then I'll stop blaming the other person. And again, as you're saying, take ownership for my choices and how I contributed to creating this experience. So,
And I'm glad that you said that, because when I was going through my divorce, I was so upset with myself, because I was saying, how did I allow this? Why did I choose this person to get married to? So I was so upset with myself because I felt like it was my fault. I chose this person to get married to. So I chose to be treated like this. That's how I initially looked at it. But then I had to sit back and think and say, you can't accept responsibility for their actions, but you can accept responsibility for your actions. And so when you think about things like that, because a lot of times you could know someone for 2 years and you really don't know them until you get married to them or you live with them, right? Because people put on this facade of being someone else and they really not. So you can be tricked, you can be duped.
So here's it. So Cherice, you know what I say about that? I said, in my experience, who people are usually can show up in the first few months, usually no longer than 6. And the person has to be really, really good for them bones to start to not be rattling and just fall out the closet eventually.
Right. But you know what we do? We see signs, and we ignore them.
Correct. Or make excuses for them.
Or make excuses, correct. So, and that's a lot of times. A lot of times we do see little things that's happening, and we'll say, "Oh, that's nothing." But that little nothing one day is going to turn into a big something. So when you see signs, when you see things like that, you need to be aware and say, "Wait a minute. If I'm with this person 10 years from now, would this be okay for me?" So we need to really start thinking about that. And so even now,
a great point. I'm sorry. I just want to say you make a great point, because what you're saying is, can I accept this person as they are, and if they never change?
That's correct.
Is this going to be still a good fit for me? And I think the other thing that you're saying too that is so important is not to beat up on yourself if you make a choice where it doesn't work and it does have some really negative consequences, because it doesn't help. And so the point of forgiveness is to not only forgive them because they're using the tools and the only way they know how to use them, the tools that they have and the only way they know how to use them, but so are you. And so it's important not to beat up on yourself, but also it's not important to beat up on them. And that's where the forgiveness comes, in.
Oh, definitely.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when you're going through your divorce, and the healing process will not take place until after you've forgiven yourself and your spouse, your ex-spouse. So you really need to hone in on that. And that's the only way I was able to heal, is like really forgive my ex. And I will say this. I know there was a time when I would say, like, Lord, when you gonna deal with him? When are you gonna take care of him? I'm just
when you gonna fix it? When you gonna fix him?
So right. And so it's so funny because my mom and my grandmother at the time was like, you know what, Cherice, the Lord, he don't take that long. He gonna fix them. He gonna fix them. It's coming. He gonna deal with them. And so I was like, okay, God, you gonna deal with them. But then I said, you know what? I can't worry about him being fixed. I need to be fixed. Because if I want to move forward, I want to have a good life, I want to be a good parent to my kids, I can't hold in all this hurt. I can't hold in all this anger. I can't do it. So I gradually started forgiving my ex. I didn't talk to him about it, and he would still do things. It would, we would still have arguments, whatever. But I was still going through the healing process, and I started to notice that I wouldn't react as I did before. Like if he did something I didn't like, I would just block him. At one time I had blocked him for at least a year because I was like, okay, I don't like what you're saying to me. I don't like the way you're talking to me. And that was the only way for me to really, tune out the noise and really concentrate on myself and forgiving him for what happened. And then once I did that, I was able to move forward. And I was able to go to church and go to the altar and not just pray for me and my kids, but pray for my ex-husband too.
So, and I know that you were in the process of talking about this, and so I, you know, wanted to expound on something you were saying, which, but I wanted to, of course, to get us back to, your process. You do the evaluation,
Mhm.
and then what happens? What happens next?
So I do the evaluation, and then I come up with a plan. And according to that plan, we would set up our meetings, our sessions, and we'll work towards your goal. So, for instance, if your goal is to, you know, have a new career after your divorce, we'll work on that. We would establish a plan on that. I'll say, hey, what do you really want to do? What do what makes you happy? Because life is really short. So you want to really do something that you enjoy doing. Or if you want to have, financial stability, what do you need to do that? Let's work towards that. If you want to be able to, date again and trust again, we'll work on a plan for that. But you have to really come to terms with how your marriage ended and taking accountability and moving forward. And we'll discuss all that within those sessions so you can walk away from your divorce not being bitter, not being upset, not being angered, really having the willingness to move forward and hopefully move forward into a new relationship.
Okay, so that sounds like the adults, but how do we secure the kids?
So I don't have kids as clients.
Okay,
I just only deal with adults.
okay,
Because kids, they're more so they need a therapist to help them through their issues. And so I'm a divorce coach. And I just really coach people through their obstacles. Now I will help the parents create a visitation plan for to work with their spouses, but I don't coach children.
okay. And I get that you don't coach children, but Cherice, because I know what I've had to deal with, and
Mm-hmm.
there's some folks that I had to pull them up
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that their behavior is harmful and negative towards their kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really what I'm asking is, in working with the adults, right? And of course I do my best to be, as kind of about it as I can, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still just some of the things, sometimes you go like, oh my God, you doing what? So
Yeah.
how do you work with, what in terms of what kind of things do you tell the parents, um, and in terms of to make sure that the kids, um, that the behavior is healthy, they're exhibiting healthy behavior
Right.
towards the other parent and the kids
Mm-hmm.
in this process. I already mentioned a couple of them, which is of course
Right.
one, not putting the kids in the middle, not sending
Right.
messages through the kids,
Right.
not talking negatively about the other parent to the kids. What are some other things that you do?
Well, I always tell parents, as you said, never talk negatively about the other parent, and do not argue in front of the children. Don't say negative things in regards to their parent indirectly, and really just think about how you would want your ex to speak about you in front of your kids. You wouldn't like it if your ex said derogatory things to your children. And also, if you are
Or
not
to the,
able
to the new partner or spouse.
right, exactly. Or if you cannot have a conversation
Mhm.
that would not end in a negative way, then there are tools out there, there are apps out there where you could communicate with that parent so you don't even have to worry about having, knock down, drown, drag out arguments. You can actually have conversations through an app or through email, um, because you need to really focus on what's best for the children. Because a lot of times kids, when you do those things, when you speak negative about the other parent, your kids take it as like, I'm a part of my dad or I'm a part of my
Mhm.
mom.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that about me? And another thing I always advise clients too, because a lot of times you may be just going through your divorce and people want to bring new partners into the mix. Like, you should hold off on that. Make sure that this is someone that you want to be with, because if you constantly bring different partners in your children's lives, that's not good. They need to have some stability, and everybody isn't meant to meet your kid. So I try to give the best advice I can in regards to kids, because I know how that affects them, because I
Okay.
saw how it affected my kids.
Yeah. Do you have them do like co-parenting agreements? Do you have the parents do co-parenting agreements?
Yes, yes, I help them with that, because a lot of times people feel like, well, I I want my kid only on Christmas, or I want them every holiday, and like, you can't do that. You have to often, unless you can talk to your ex-spouse about those things, but you really should have it documented and written, so if anything occurs, you'll have paperwork for that.
So I think the other thing too, again, as someone who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist, the other thing too that's important is not to use the kids as a weapon against the other parent,
Right.
and that also includes visitation.
Mm-hmm.
So one parent should not interfere with the visitation of the other kids. And I
That's
know
correct.
sometimes people even they're like, well, so and so is not paying child support, so then why are they entitled to see the kids?
Right.
And that's not something. Visitation with your child should not be based upon if the
Right.
parent is paying or not paying child support.
Mm-hmm. And I see that a lot of men, they go through where the mom is withholding the kid from them,
The
or
visitation. Mhm.
right, or um, you know, they're upset because of whatever reason, and they want to withhold the kids from the dad, and that's not good. If the father wants to hold a relationship with that kid and is positive and is not doing anything negative in that kid's life, the father should not be barred from seeing that kid. That is very detrimental to kids, especially when kids are close to their parents and you just stop the relationship. You shouldn't do that. That's not good. So I advise my clients to do the best that they can to ensure that their kids sustain a relationship with their parents, because you don't want to do that, because as kids get older, they're going to find out the truth, and when they find out that you've withheld them from their parent, that could be detrimental to your relationship with your kid. So always kind of think about that in the back of your mind. I don't care how bad you and your ex don't get along, never withhold a kid from their parent, unless it's in a way that the kid will be hurt. Right?
Correct. Right.
So,
Unless there's some abuse or neglect involved.
correct. Correct.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And so in this last minute, because I want to be able to get into your book,
Hmm.
the take 30 seconds a minute and say what are some things that again parents can do from that's because now we got to shift commitment and communication from what didn't happen in the marriage to now communication and commitment in order to you make this divorce as painless as possible for everybody.
Hmm.
So what are things you recommend that people do?
So some things that I recommend people do, they should really have a good communication with their spouse or soon to be ex-spouse. Talk about what you want, talk about what you need, talk about the children, talk about, where do you want them to go to school? If you want them to have extracurricular activities, how do you want them to be raised, while you guys are apart? you really should be on the same. You really should be on the same page about everything in order for your divorce to go smoothly. I know a lot of times that people can't understand that, you need to still be able to communicate, but you really need to sit down and think about your wants, your needs, and combine those things and have a mutual agreement on how to move forward with your lives.
And so, given that folks were having difficulty doing that within the marriage, more than likely they need some help doing it with
Of course.
the dissolution of the marriage.
Yes.
So obviously, the thing that they can get, some help with that would be from the divorce coach,
Yes.
uh, right?
Yes.
From Cherice N, the divorce coach,
Yes.
for a therapist, whether the therapist is doing family therapy or is doing individual therapy with the parents or therapy with the kids, um, but get some help, from someone
Yes.
that's skilled, not not just nay and them.
Right. Right. Because I
Skilled.
recommend, like, when I see that my clients, they need therapy, they need to see a licensed therapist. I do refer my clients out to people that's a therapist, because I'm I'm not a licensed therapist. I can only coach you through things, and so
Mhm.
especially with children, if I know that your kids may need assistance, they may need a therapist. I do refer my clients to therapists to assist, because it's only so much that I can do. Um, but if you need help in that department with a therapist, I do have therapists that I can recommend.
Okay. And so in this last minute or so, let's talk about your book that's due to be released March 10th.
Yes, I'm so excited. It's called Love Notes, Affirmations, Essays, Inspirational Notes, Poems and Quotes that was inspired for healing. It is a phenomenal book. It took me 3 years to write it. I have
Hmm.
over 100 writings in the book. I have illustrations in the book too for some of the writings, because I want people to really understand where I was going with the writing, and I want them to be in the same. Like, I just want them to be in the same room in my head as I was really writing this book. So I have illustrations that's in the book as well, and I think that
So what
people
so what
enjoy.
prompted it? What prompted you to write this?
Um, I've always written for therapy,
Hmm.
and so I just started waking up in the middle of the night. But God was waking me up in the middle of the night, 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would just start writing. And when I finally
What are you
decided,
doing?
yeah, so when I finally,
Your own form of what are you doing?
yes, so when I finally decided that I was ready to put the book together, I had
Mhm.
over 100 entries in my phone of writings,
Oh
and
wow.
it's been amazing. I've written some things during COVID. I've written some things in regards to relationships. I wrote this one essay. It's called Damaged Goods. It was in reference to a relationship that I was in. I have another poem. It's called Baby Glow. I wrote that about my being pregnant with my daughter.
Mhm.
And I have another poem that I wrote. It's called My Black Prince Shall Rise. And I wrote it thinking about my son. So I had some really inspirational things in the book, and I know people will enjoy it.
So thank you so much for that, for being willing to, to open up, um, your heart,
Hmm.
and your mind, and to welcome people in, and
Yes.
also for, the work that you do. So, I just encourage people to, to take advantage of the divorce coaches, skills and abilities, and a therapist to help you um, gains tools and skills that you don't have, in order for it to be, as healthy a transition as possible. People, if your roof leaks, you call in a roofer. If your
Right.
plumbing is backed up, you call in a plumber. So don't let you not knowing how to do something, or your belief that I'm weak or stupid, or I can do this on my own. If you don't know if you really don't have the skills and the tools to do so, don't let that stand in the way of again, you securing your babies, your kids,
Right.
and your relationship with the other parent, because again, as I say, you still family, you still got to raise those kids together. And how do you do that in a way that is as healthy and as safe as possible?
Hmm. And sustainable for your children too.
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely. So, how do folks reach out to you? How do they connect with you?
so they can connect with me on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Divorce Coach CC. You can also connect with me on my website, which is www.coachingthemasses.com. And you can also give me a call if you need my services at 708-543-1213. And that's how you can reach me.
Well, again, thank you so much for appearing and having the conversation with me. I'm sure that this will help some folks, and and hopefully you can come back again, and we can get into this some more, get into the weeds, you
Okay.
know, because I know you got a whole lot more that
Yeah.
that you could offer folks that's going to
Mhm.
make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me too. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Goddess. It is my pleasure. So we all know that going through a divorce, for those who've been through a divorce, tends to be a very difficult time. I hope you learned some things that have uh, helped you, helped your family, helped your children um, get through divorce as safely and as healthy as possible. And I hope you will learn and discover that divorce doesn't have to suck, and that it is possible for it to be a more harmonious experience instead of one that is conflict filled. Conflict filled. I'm your host, Dr. Balin A. Durr, awakening and empowering you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in the sweet spot. I'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us today in the sweet spot. Share, follow, and like us on social media. To learn more, please visit balinadurmd.com, spelled BALINADURRMD.com. Join us next week, and remember, when you heal your mind, all things are possible.